The conference room on the 23rd floor of the Chicago Family Law Center felt suffocating. Not from lack of air, but from the weight of broken promises hanging between two people who once promised forever. Victoria Chun sat with perfect posture, her charcoal pencil skirt and cream silk blouse suggesting quiet sophistication. Across the polished glass table, Marcus Webb lounged with the confidence of someone who believed he'd already won. His custom-tailored navy suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Ironic, considering he hadn't paid for it himself. The mediator, a weary woman in her 50s, slid the divorce documents across the table. The sound of paper against glass seemed unnaturally loud. "This is your last chance to reconsider the terms," the mediator said, looking at Victoria with concern. "You're walking away with nothing from a 10-year marriage." Marcus laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "She should be grateful I'm not suing her for wasting a decade of my life." He leaned forward, his cologne overpowering. "Let's be honest, Victoria. You're a has-been violinist who hasn't performed professionally in years. You've been living off my executive salary, enjoying the lifestyle I built. Without me, you'll be back in that cramped studio apartment in 6 months, teaching tone-deaf kids for pennies." Victoria's face remained serene, though her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. She'd instructed him clearly. No objections, no counter-demands. Just let Marcus talk. "I mean, look at you," Marcus continued, warming to his subject. "You don't even have a career anymore. What are you going to do? Go back to playing in subway stations for spare change?" He smirked at his own joke. "Meanwhile, I'll be living my best life with someone who actually appreciates success." Someone. He meant Sloane, his personal assistant who was half his age and twice as expensive in her tastes. Victoria picked up the gold pen, the one Marcus had given her on their 5th anniversary, back when he still pretended to care. With steady hands, she signed her name on every flagged page. The ink flowed smoothly, each signature another chain breaking free. Marcus snatched the documents the moment she finished, scanning them with greedy eyes. Finally, freedom from dead weight. He stood abruptly, already texting someone, probably Sloane, announcing his victory. Victoria gathered her simple leather bag and walked toward the door. Her heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor. Measured, controlled, nothing like the chaos Marcus was about to face. "Oh, Victoria," Marcus called as she reached the threshold. She paused but didn't turn. "Don't come crawling back when reality hits. My new life doesn't have room for charity cases." Victoria's lips curved slightly. "Don't worry, Marcus. You'll be too busy dealing with your own reality very soon." She left without another word, leaving Marcus puzzled by her cryptic response. Outside, a black Tesla waited. Victoria slid into the back seat, pulling out her phone. One text message to her family's CFO. "It's done. Execute phase 2. Within seconds, a response arrived. "Accounts frozen. Welcome back to the helm, Ms. Chun." What will Marcus discover when his carefully constructed world begins to crumble? And what secrets has Victoria been hiding behind her quiet demeanor? Marcus Webb felt like a man reborn. The divorce papers sat in his briefcase like a trophy, proof that he'd escaped his boring marriage and could now live without limitations. His first call was to Sloane. "Baby, it's official. She signed everything without a fight. Tonight we celebrate properly." Sloane's delighted squeal pierced through the phone. "Oh, Marcus, does this mean we can finally start planning? I've been looking at venues, and there's this incredible estate in Lake Forest that does weddings. It's $275,000 for the premium package, but you only get married once, right?" Marcus hesitated only slightly. $275,000 was steep, but he was the chief operating officer of Chun Enterprises. His salary was substantial, and he had full access to the corporate accounts Victoria's family had given him to manage business expenses. He'd been creative with those expenses for years. "Anything for you, darling. Book it for next month." "Next month? Marcus, are you serious?" Sloane practically screamed with excitement. "I need to call everyone. This is going to be the wedding of the year." After hanging up, Marcus decided to celebrate his freedom with a shopping spree. He drove his Porsche, technically a company car assigned to the COO, to the Magnificent Mile. First stop, the designer boutique where Sloane had been eyeing a collection of handbags. The sales associate recognized him immediately. "Mr. Webb, wonderful to see you. Is Mrs. Webb joining you today?" "Actually, it's just Mr. Webb now," he said with a conspiratorial smile. "And I'm here to buy something special for my fiancé." He selected 3 handbags, a pair of diamond earrings and a silk scarf. Total, $47,000. He handed over his Black American Express card, the one with Chan Enterprises, embossed beneath his name. The associate swiped the card. Swiped it again. Her professional smile wavered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Webb. The card is declining. Perhaps it's a temporary system error." Marcus felt a prickle of annoyance. "Try another one." He handed over his personal platinum card. Declined. His business visa. Declined. Heat crept up his neck. "This is absurd. Try running them again." The associate did, with the same results. Other customers were beginning to notice. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, judging. "There must be fraud protection triggered," he said loudly, for the benefit of the watching customers. "I'll call my bank and sort this out." He grabbed his cards and hurried out, Sloane's gifts forgotten on the counter. In his car, Marcus pulled up his banking apps. Every single one showed the same message. Account access restricted. Contact customer service. His hands shook as he dialed the bank's priority line for high-net-worth clients. After navigating through automated menus, he finally reached a representative. "Mr. Webb, I see the issue. Your accounts have been frozen due to a request from the primary account holder. All your cards have been deactivated." "Primary account holder? I am the primary account holder." "No, sir. According to our records, you were listed as an authorized user on accounts owned by Chun Family Trust. That authorization was revoked this morning at 10:17 a.m. the time Victoria signed the papers." "That's impossible. Those are my accounts. I've had them for 10 years. "I'm sorry, sir, but authorized users don't have ownership rights. The actual account holder can revoke access at any time. You'll need to contact the trust directly." Marcus sat in stunned silence after the call ended. The Porsche, the penthouse apartment, the country club membership, all of it was tied to Chun Family Trust accounts. Victoria's family accounts. His phone buzzed. A text from Sloane. "Baby, the venue needs 50% deposit by end of day tomorrow. That's $137,500. Can you wire it? Also, I found the perfect wedding dress, $35,000 but totally worth it. 2 hearts." Marcus stared at the message as reality began to crystallize. He had his COO salary, sure, but that was paid monthly and he'd just been paid last week. His actual personal checking account had maybe $3,000 in it. He'd never needed to save because everything was always available. Another text, this time from the property management company. "Mr. Webb, your rent payment of $8,500 has been declined. Please submit payment within 48 hours to avoid late fees." Rent. He didn't own the penthouse. It was a corporate housing benefit. The Porsche's ownership papers were in the name of Chun Enterprises. His gym membership, his designer watch collection, all purchased on those now frozen cards. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. What had Victoria done? How will Marcus keep up his facade when everything he owns belongs to the woman he just humiliated? And what other surprises has Victoria prepared? Marcus Webb had never felt true panic before. Sure, he'd had stressful board meetings and tight deadlines, but this was different. This was the sensation of solid ground turning to quicksand beneath his feet. He sat in the Porsche, no Chun Enterprises Porsche, in the parking garage of the shopping district, frantically scrolling through his phone. His personal checking account, $3,247. His savings account, $1,850. That was it. Everything else had been in accounts he now realized he'd never actually owned. How had he not seen this? 10 years of marriage, and he'd never questioned why all the bills, the cards, the assets were tied to Victoria's family trust. She'd been so quiet, so unassuming. He'd assumed she was just grateful to be married to an important executive like him. He'd been a fool. His phone rang. Sloane. He considered not answering, but she'd just keep calling. "Hey baby," he said, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. "Marcus. I'm at the bridal boutique right now. You need to see this dress. It's like something a princess would wear. The designer said it's one of a kind. Can you come put down the deposit? They need $17,500 today to hold it. $17,000. He didn't have it. Sloan, something's come up at work. There's a temporary freeze on the corporate accounts while auditors review some paperwork. It's just bureaucracy, nothing serious, but it might take a few days to resolve. Silence. Then. A few days? Marcus, the wedding is in 4 weeks. I need to pay for the dress, the venue, the caterers, the photographer. Everything requires deposits now. I know, baby, I know. Can you put some things on your credit cards for now? I'll reimburse you as soon as this is sorted out. Another pause. My cards are maxed out. You said I could spend freely since you'd be paying everything off. Of course they were. Marcus closed his eyes. How much do you owe? Like $80,000? Maybe $90,000? But Marcus, you said money was no object. $90,000. On top of the $137,500 for the venue, the dress, the flowers, the band. Sloan had already booked the honeymoon suite in Bora Bora. He'd created a financial monster. Just hold off on any new purchases for now. Let me figure this out. Hold off. Sloane's voice rose to a shrill pitch. Marcus Webb, are you seriously telling me to put our wedding on hold? Everyone knows about it. I've posted about it on Instagram. My friends are already talking about their dresses and making plans. You can't humiliate me like this. I'm not trying to. Figure it out, Marcus. You're a COO, aren't you? Act like it. She hung up. Marcus sat in the car, feeling the walls closing in. He needed money and he needed it fast. His salary wouldn't hit for another 3 weeks. What could he do? The company accounts. He still had access to those, didn't he? He was the chief operating officer. He could authorize transfers for business expenses. He'd done it before. Small amounts here and there that no one ever questioned. He logged into the Chun Enterprises financial system on his phone. The system loaded, and he navigated to the Treasury Management section. But when he tried to access the transaction authorization page, a red error message appeared. User privileges insufficient. Contact system administrator. Marcus tried again. Same message. His hands trembled as he called the company's IT department. A young tech answered on the second ring. Hey, this is Marcus Webb, CO. I'm having trouble accessing the Treasury system. My user privileges seem to have been downgraded. Typing sounds on the other end. Mr. Webb, let me check. Okay, I see the issue. Your account permissions were modified this morning by the primary administrator. You now have view-only access to financial systems. View-only? That's impossible. I need full authorization access to do my job. I'm sorry, sir, but the change came directly from the executive suite. It was flagged as high priority and non-reversible without approval from Ms. Chun. Ms. Chun. Victoria. What do you mean, Ms. Chun? Victoria doesn't work for the company. A confused pause. No, sir. Ms. Victoria Chun, CEO of Chun Enterprises. She owns 89% of the company stock through the family trust. According to our records, she's always been listed as the CEO, though she appointed you as COO to handle day-to-day operations. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Ew. 89% ownership. Pointed him. He'd never been the boss. He'd been her employee. When did this change happen? Marcus whispered. The permission modification? This morning at 10:19 a.m., sir. 2 minutes after she signed the divorce papers. Marcus ended the call. He sat in the car staring at nothing, as his entire worldview shattered and reformed into something he didn't recognize. He wasn't a powerful executive who'd married a simple housewife. He was a middle manager who'd been kept comfortable by his wealthy wife while he believed his own lies. And now, that wife had systematically removed every piece of the safety net he'd taken for granted. With no access to funds and a lavish wedding just weeks away, how will Marcus save face? And what else is Victoria planning to take from him? By evening, Marcus had crafted what he thought was a brilliant solution. He would write a company check from the Discretionary Business Development Fund. Technically, he didn't need electronic authorization for physical checks. Those were considered legacy systems, and hadn't been updated with the new security protocols yet. He drove to the office, which was mostly empty at 7 p.m. Using his ID badge, which thankfully still worked, he accessed his office on the 18th floor. In the bottom drawer of his desk, he found the checkbook that connected to the business development account. This fund was meant for client entertainment, partnership opportunities, and similar expenses. It usually maintained a balance of around $500,000. With a steady hand, Marcus wrote a check for $150,000, payable to the Lake Forest venue. He'd tell Sloan to deposit it immediately, then he'd book the other vendors with additional checks. By the time the accounting department caught on, if they caught on, the wedding would be over and he'd be married to Sloan. Surely Victoria wouldn't sabotage things after the marriage was finalized. It would look too vindictive, too public. He was wrong about many things, but especially about that. The next morning, Marcus met Sloan at the wedding venue. A sprawling estate with gardens, fountains, and a grand ballroom that looked like something from a European palace. The event's coordinator, a woman named Jennifer with aggressively white teeth and a tablet permanently attached to her hand, greeted them warmly. "Mr. Webb, Miss Sterling. So wonderful to meet you both. I understand you're looking at our Platinum Forever package." "That's the one," Marcus said, pulling out the check with a flourish. "Let's get this locked in." Jennifer examined the check, nodded approvingly and said, "Perfect. Give me just a moment to process this with our accounting office." She stepped away, tablet in hand. Marcus watched her through the glass door as she spoke on the phone, nodding and smiling. Everything seemed fine. Except it wasn't. Jennifer returned, but her smile had shifted. It was professional now, almost strained. "Mr. Webb, I apologize, but there seems to be a small issue. Our accounting office tried to verify the check with Chen Enterprises, and they were informed that you no longer have authorization to write checks on that account." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "That's ridiculous. I'm the COO. "I understand, sir, but our policy requires verification for deposits over $100,000. The person we spoke with, a Ms. Chun, indicated that the account has been flagged and that any check signed by you should not be accepted." Sloan turned to Marcus, her eyes narrowing. "What is she talking about? Who is Ms. Chun?" "My ex-wife," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "She's trying to sabotage us." "Your ex-wife can block company checks? What kind of setup did you have?" Sloan's voice was rising, drawing attention from staff members preparing other areas of the venue. "It's complicated, okay? Look, Jennifer, can't you just deposit the check anyway? By the time it clears or bounces, we'll have this sorted out." Jennifer's professional mask slipped entirely. "Mr. Webb, we don't operate that way. If the check won't clear, we certainly can't accept it. I'm afraid without a valid form of payment today, we'll have to release your date. We have 3 other couples interested in that weekend." "3 other couples?" Sloan shrieked. "We had an agreement. A tentative hold, Ms. Sterling. Without the deposit, there is no binding agreement." Marcus tried everything: promises of cash tomorrow, offers to put a smaller amount on a personal card, which he knew would decline but hoped would buy time, even attempting to name-drop supposed connections to Chicago's elite. Jennifer remained unmoved. They left the venue empty-handed, Sloan crying angry tears in the passenger seat of the Porsche. "I can't believe this. Do you understand how humiliating this is? I've been posting about this wedding for weeks. My friends are all jealous because it's going to be so amazing. And now what am I supposed to tell them?" Marcus didn't answer. He was too busy calculating his dwindling options. Over the next 3 days, the situation spiraled. The bridal boutique called to say that without a deposit, they'd sold the one-of-a-kind dress to another bride. The photographer emailed to say he'd booked the date with someone else. The florist, the band, the caterer, one by one, they all confirmed they couldn't hold his reservations without payment. Marcus tried taking out a personal loan, but his application was denied. His debt-to-income ratio was terrible, and without the inflated income he'd claimed, which had been his salary plus unlimited access to Chen accounts, he wasn't eligible. He tried calling Victoria. Her number was disconnected. He tried showing up at what he thought was her new apartment. The doorman informed him that Ms. Chun had left instructions. Marcus Webb was not to be admitted under any circumstances. By the end of the week, Sloan was asking uncomfortable questions. Marcus, be straight with me. How much money do you actually have? They were in his penthouse, the one he'd learned would be reclaimed by Chun Enterprises at the end of the month when his corporate housing benefit ended with his divorce. It's just a temporary cash flow problem, baby. Once I sort out some legal issues with Victoria. How much, Marcus? He sighed. About 3,000 in checking. Maybe 2,000 in savings. Sloane's face went pale. $5,000? That's it? But you're a CEO. You wear Rolex watches. You drive a Porsche. The watch was a gift from the company. The car is a company car. Look, I have a salary, $180,000 a year. But it's paid monthly and I just got paid last week, so I won't see more income for 3 more weeks. $180,000? Marcus, that's not rich. That's just comfortable. How are we going to afford a $300,000 wedding on $180,000 a year? Marcus realized, too late, that he'd never actually explained to Sloane that most of his lifestyle had been funded by Victoria's family wealth. He'd let her believe he was independently wealthy. We'll figure it out, he said weakly. Sloane stood up, grabbing her designer purse, purchased on one of her maxed-out credit cards. No, Marcus. You'll figure it out. I'm not marrying someone who lied to me about their financial situation. I'm not signing up to be poor. Poor? $180,000 a year isn't poor. It is when you have $90,000 in credit card debt that you made me rack up. She headed for the door. Call me when you're actually rich again. Or better yet, don't call me at all. She slammed the door behind her. Marcus stood alone in the penthouse, surrounded by furniture and art that didn't belong to him, wearing clothes purchased with money that had never been his. For the first time in 10 years, he had absolutely nothing. Marcus has lost his fiancée, his funding, and his dignity. But Victoria isn't finished yet. What public humiliation does she have planned for the man who thought he could discard her? Marcus spent the next week in a fog. Sloane had blocked his number, and her Instagram account, which had been filled with wedding planning posts, had gone private. He'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she was already dating someone else, a hedge fund manager with actual money. He tried to bury himself in work, but that proved impossible. His new view-only access to financial systems meant he couldn't approve expenses, authorize payments, or do most of the tasks that had filled his days as COO. Department heads started going around him, submitting requests directly to Ms. Chen's office. He tried to schedule a meeting with Victoria, but her assistant, someone he'd never even met, politely informed him that Ms. Chen was not taking meetings with former family members. Former family members. The phrase stung. On Wednesday afternoon, his secretary, one of the few people still reporting to him, knocked on his office door. She looked uncomfortable. Mr. Webb, this was just delivered for you. She handed him a cream-colored envelope, thick and expensive, with his name written in elegant calligraphy. After she left, Marcus opened it. Inside was an invitation, and what he read made his blood run cold. You are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Sloane Sterling and Marcus Webb. Saturday, August 19th at 7 p.m. Lake Forest Estate and Gardens. Black tie reception to follow. Marcus read it 3 times, certain he was hallucinating. This was the wedding he'd tried to book. The venue that had turned him away. The date he'd wanted. But he hadn't booked it. Sloane had left him. So who had sent this? He flipped the invitation over. On the back, in the same elegant calligraphy, was a note. Since you planned such a lavish celebration, I thought it would be a shame to let it go to waste. Come see how the other half lives. VC, Victoria Chen. Marcus's hand shook. What was she playing at? He called the Lake Forest Estate immediately. This is Marcus Webb. I received an invitation for an event on August 19th, but there must be some mistake. Oh, Mr. Webb. Jennifer's chirpy voice came through the phone. Yes, your event is all booked and paid in full. We're so excited to host your celebration. Paid in full? By whom? By, oh. Jennifer's tone shifted. I'm not at liberty to share client payment information, but rest assured everything is arranged. The deposit and balance have been paid, and we have your guest list of 200 people. It's going to be a beautiful event. Who paid for it? I really can't say, Mr. Webb. Perhaps you should discuss it with your fiancé? Have a wonderful day. Click. Marcus tried Sloane's number, forgetting she blocked him. He tried Instagram, but her profile was still private. He even tried showing up at her apartment building, but the doorman informed him Miss Sterling had left strict instructions not to admit him. By Thursday, social media was buzzing. Sloane had unblocked Marcus long enough to post a cryptic message. When the universe closes a door, it opens a window to something much better. Gemstone sparkles, #blessed beyond measure, #new beginnings. Her friends were commenting with congratulations and speculation. Some mentioned seeing her with a distinguished older gentleman at an exclusive restaurant. Others talked about a mysterious benefactor who had swept in to save her dreams. Marcus felt nauseous. Victoria was toying with him, but he couldn't figure out the endgame. Friday afternoon, another delivery arrived at his office. This time a large black box tied with silver ribbon. Inside was a tuxedo, perfectly tailored to his measurements, and a note card. Tomorrow 7 p.m. Don't be late. You'll want to see this. VC. Marcus wanted to burn it all, to throw it in the garbage, to pretend none of this was happening. But curiosity, and something darker, something like dread, compelled him to try on the tuxedo. Tonight we celebrate resilience, independence, and the strength it takes to rebuild after betrayal. Her eyes scanned the crowd and landed directly on Marcus. As many of you know, I recently ended a relationship that no longer served me. And tonight, I wanted to share something important about the nature of power, ownership, and knowing your worth. Marcus felt the crowd's attention shift toward him as Victoria continued to stare in his direction. "Let me tell you a story," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. What truth is Victoria about to reveal? And how will Marcus survive the humiliation that's about to unfold in front of Chicago's most influential people? Victoria stood on the stage like a queen addressing her court, the emerald gown catching the light with every breath. Marcus wanted to run, to disappear, but his feet refused to move. Around him, guests whispered, putting pieces together, recognizing him from business circles. 10 years ago, Victoria began, her voice steady and clear. I made a decision that changed my life. I fell in love with someone who seemed charming, ambitious, hardworking. Someone who said all the right things about partnership and building a life together. She paused, taking a sip from a glass of water on the podium. What I didn't realize at the time was that he loved the life more than he loved me. He loved my family's company, our resources, our connections. And over the years he convinced himself, and tried to convince everyone else, that he had built it all himself. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus felt people turning to look at him, recognition dawning on faces. My ex-husband, Victoria said, and now she gestured directly at Marcus, stands here tonight. I invited him because I wanted him to see what actual success looks like. Not borrowed success. Not pretend authority. Real power. The spotlight that had been on Victoria split, and a second beam found Marcus in the crowd. He was fully illuminated now, trapped like an insect under glass. Marcus Webb worked as Chief Operating Officer of my company, Chan Enterprises, Victoria continued. A title I gave him. A salary I paid. Access to wealth he didn't earn. And over time he began to believe his own story. He thought he was the hero and I was just... What did you call me in the divorce mediation, Marcus? A simple housewife with no skills except spending money? Gasps and uncomfortable laughter scattered through the audience. Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't know because he never bothered to look beyond his own reflection, is that I am Chan Enterprises. I hold 89% of the stock through my family trust. I am the CEO, the chairman of the board, and the primary decision maker. I allowed him to believe he was in charge because I loved him, and I wanted him to feel valued. She let that sink in for a moment. But love built on lies isn't love at all. It's a performance. And when Marcus decided he wanted a different leading lady, someone younger, flashier, more impressed by luxury, I decided it was time to end the show. Marcus felt dizzy. Every eye in the room was on him. Some people looked sympathetic, but most wore expressions of shock or schadenfreude. This venue, Victoria gestured around the beautiful ballroom, was supposed to host Marcus's wedding to his former assistant. He tried to book it with a company check, my company's check, that he wasn't authorized to write. When that failed, when all his cards were declined and his access to funds disappeared, his fiancée left him. Someone in the crowd laughed. Others shushed them, but the damage was done. The laughter spread like a virus, quiet, polite, but unmistakable. I paid for this event in full, Victoria said. I invited Chicago's finest to witness what happens when you build your life on someone else's foundation, and then burn the bridge that held you up. She stepped down from the stage, and the spotlight followed her as she walked directly toward Marcus. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Victoria stopped 3 feet from him, close enough that he could see the resolve in her eyes, the complete absence of the softness he'd once taken advantage of. You humiliated me in that mediation room, Marcus. You spoke about me like I was worthless. You told your mistress I was dead weight. You forgot that I was the ocean you were swimming in, and you thought you were flying. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. I want to be clear, Victoria said, her voice dropping so that only Marcus and those immediately around them could hear. I'm not doing this because I'm angry. I'm not trying to win you back. I'm doing this so you understand the cost of your choices. She raised her voice again, addressing the room. Effective Monday, Marcus Webb will no longer hold any position at Chun Enterprises. His employment contract, which included the penthouse, the car, and various other benefits he believed were his by right, has been terminated. I'm told he has approximately $3,000 to his name. That's what 10 years of arrogance will buy you. The room was silent now, the earlier laughter replaced by uncomfortable tension. However, Victoria continued, I'm not heartless. Marcus will receive a severance package of 6 months' salary, $90,000, which should give him time to find new employment somewhere that doesn't require borrowing someone else's success. She turned back to the stage, then paused as if remembering something. Oh, and about the wedding everyone heard about? It's not happening. Sloane Sterling, after learning Marcus wasn't actually wealthy, decided to pursue other options. I believe she's currently dating someone in private equity. How wonderfully predictable. The laughter returned, louder this time. Victoria climbed back onto the stage. Tonight is about celebrating women who build their own empires, who don't wait for permission, who understand that real power comes from ownership, not performance. To all the women here who've been underestimated, this is for you. The crowd erupted in applause. Champagne glasses were raised. The music resumed, something upbeat and celebratory. Marcus stood frozen in the spotlight until someone mercifully switched it off. In the darkness, he stumbled toward the exit, past faces that ranged from pitying to contemptuous. Outside, the warm evening air felt suffocating. He made it to his Honda Civic, unglamorous, old but paid for, and sat in the driver's seat with the door open, trying to catch his breath. A figure approached. Marcus looked up to see a man in his 60s, distinguished in a perfectly tailored suit, with silver hair and eyes that assessed everything. Mr. Webb, the man said, his voice carrying quiet authority. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Harrison Zale, Victoria's uncle and the CFO of Chun Family Trust. Marcus didn't respond. He had nothing left to say. Victoria asked me to deliver a message, Harrison continued. She wants you to know that this isn't personal revenge. It's a lesson. She gave you opportunities, resources, and support, and you repaid her with contempt. You believed you were entitled to things you never earned. I worked for that company, Marcus finally said, his voice hoarse. You did, Harrison agreed. And you were compensated fairly for that work. $180,000 a year is excellent for a COO of a mid-sized enterprise. But you wanted more. You wanted credit for building something that existed long before you arrived, and will continue long after you're gone. Harrison pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to Marcus. Your severance agreement. Sign it and you'll receive your payout. Refuse and Victoria will pursue legal action for the unauthorized checks you attempted to write, the company resources you misappropriated for personal use, and the fraudulent expense reports you filed over the years. She has documentation of everything. Marcus took the envelope with numb fingers. One more thing, Harrison said, his voice softer now. Victoria genuinely loved you once. She built her life around supporting yours. You broke something that was freely given, and you did it because you thought she was too weak to fight back. That was your mistake. Harrison walked away, leaving Marcus alone in the parking lot with the distant sound of celebration echoing from the ballroom. Marcus has been publicly exposed and stripped of everything. But as he faces the ruins of his life, what will he discover about himself? And is Victoria truly finished with him? Or is there one final lesson to be learned? Sunday morning arrived with cruel brightness. Marcus woke in the penthouse, though not for much longer, with a headache that had nothing to do with alcohol and everything to do with humiliation. His phone had exploded overnight. Text messages, emails, missed calls. Most were from colleagues expressing shock or offering hollow sympathy. A few were from former friends asking if the rumors were true. Several were from creditors wondering when he'd make payments on debts he'd forgotten existed. One email stood out, sent at 2:47 a.m. from an unknown address. Subject: You're famous. Marcus, thought you'd want to know that videos from last night's gala are going viral. Entitled COO Gets Reality Check from Secret CEO Ex-Wife, is trending on 3 platforms. You're a cautionary tale now. Congrats on finally making an impact. A former colleague. Marcus opened Twitter against his better judgment. Sure enough, clips from Victoria's speech had been shared thousands of times. The comments ranged from supportive of Victoria, "This is what happens when men underestimate women," to brutally mocking of Marcus. Imagine finding out your whole life was a participation trophy. Someone had created a meme of his face during the speech, caption, "When you realize you're not the main character." Marcus threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. Screen cracked but still functional. He spent the morning packing. Most of what filled the penthouse wasn't his. The furniture had been provided by the company. The art on the walls, the expensive coffee maker, the designer dish set, all company property. He filled 3 suitcases with clothes and personal items, which was embarrassingly little for someone who'd lived there for 2 years. By Monday he had to be out. Chun Enterprises was sending a moving team to retrieve their belongings and prepare the unit for the next COO, whoever that would be. A knock at the door interrupted his packing. Marcus answered to find a courier with a tablet, requesting his signature for a delivery. He signed without looking and received a thick folder. Inside was the paperwork Harrison had mentioned, the severance agreement. Marcus read through it carefully, his business school training kicking in despite everything. The terms were exactly as stated. 6 months' salary paid in monthly installments, continuation of health insurance for the same period, and a non-disparagement clause. In exchange, Marcus would waive any claims against Chun Enterprises, admit to no wrongdoing, though the unauthorized checks were specifically referenced, and agree not to discuss company business publicly. There was one additional clause that caught his attention. Employee agrees to participate in one exit interview with CEO Victoria Chun, to be scheduled at her discretion within 30 days of contract signing. Failure to attend will result in forfeiture of severance benefits. An exit interview with Victoria. The thought made him nauseous, but $90,000 was all that stood between him and complete financial ruin. Marcus signed every page, witnessing his own surrender in black ink. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of humiliation. Marcus moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment in a decent but unglamorous neighborhood. He had to finance the security deposit and first month's rent with his first severance payment, leaving him with barely enough for groceries. He applied for jobs, but word traveled fast in Chicago's business community. Interviews that started promising turned cold once his name was recognized. One hiring manager, initially enthusiastic, actually said, "Oh, you're that Marcus Webb. I'm sorry, but we're looking for someone with different publicity." The viral videos had made him unhireable, at least in his field and city. By week 4, Marcus received an email from Victoria's assistant scheduling the exit interview. Friday at 2 p.m., at Chun Enterprises headquarters. Marcus almost didn't go. The thought of facing Victoria again, of returning to the building where he'd once felt important, was excruciating. But he needed that severance money. Pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. Friday arrived. Marcus put on one of his nicer suits. Not the designer stuff that had been purchased with company funds, but a decent navy suit he'd bought years ago. He took public transit to the office, a first for him. The train was crowded, impersonal, full of people living real lives that didn't involve pretending to be someone else. Chun Enterprises occupied floors 15 through 22 of a downtown high-rise. Marcus had always entered through the executive elevator in the parking garage, but that access was revoked. Now he entered through the main lobby like everyone else. The security guard checked his ID against a visitor list and handed him a temporary badge. Not an employee badge. A visitor badge. The elevator ride to the 22nd floor, the executive level, felt eternal. When the doors opened, Marcus was met by Victoria's assistant, a young woman named Sarah who'd started just a month before his termination. "Mr. Webb, Miss Chun is ready for you. Follow me, please." Sarah led him past offices and conference rooms he'd once used freely, past assistants who glanced up with recognition and quickly looked away. They arrived at the corner office, the CEO's office that Victoria had rarely used during their marriage, preferring to work remotely. Sarah opened the door. "Miss Chun, Mr. Webb is here." "Thank you, Sarah. We'll need privacy, please." Victoria sat behind a massive desk, her posture relaxed but professional. She wore a charcoal business suit, her hair pulled back simply. She looked competent, controlled, nothing like the woman Marcus had once dismissed as decorative. "Marcus, please sit down." He sat in one of the leather chairs facing her desk, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. Victoria studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she opened a folder on her desk. "This exit interview has two purposes," she said. "First, to satisfy the legal requirements of your severance agreement. Second, to give you something I didn't get, closure." Marcus remained silent. "I'm going to ask you some questions," Victoria continued. "You can answer honestly or you can lie. It won't affect your severance. That's guaranteed regardless. But for once, I'd like to have a real conversation with the man I married. Not the performance you've been giving for 10 years. She leaned back in her chair. "Let's start with an easy one. When did you stop loving me?" What will Marcus confess in this final confrontation? And what does Victoria really want from this meeting? Revenge, closure, or something else entirely? Marcus hadn't expected that question. He'd prepared for accusations, for legal disclaimers, for cold professionalism. But when did you stop loving me? Cut through all his defenses. He stared at his hands, noting how the gold wedding band was gone, leaving a faint tan line. "I don't know if I ever did," he finally said. "Not the way you deserved." Victoria's expression didn't change, but he saw her pen pause over the notepad in front of her. "Explain." Marcus took a breath. If this was his last conversation with her, he might as well be honest. "When we met, I was drowning in student loans, working 60-hour weeks at a consulting firm that barely paid me enough to live. You were everything I wasn't. Educated, cultured, from a family with real wealth and influence. When you showed interest in me, it felt like winning the lottery. So you married me for money." "No. I mean," Marcus struggled for the right words. "I was attracted to you. I admired you. But I was also attracted to what you represented. Access. Opportunity. A life I'd only dreamed about. And when I offered you the COO position, I convinced myself I'd earned it. You said I was smart, capable, that the company needed someone with my skills. I wanted to believe it was true, that I wasn't just your charity case with a job title." Victoria made a note. "When did I become an obstacle instead of a partner?" That one was harder. Marcus thought back through their marriage, trying to pinpoint the shift. "It was gradual," he said. "At first I was grateful. But over time people would ask about my work and I'd tell them about the deals I was closing, the departments I was managing. They'd be impressed. And then someone would mention Chin Enterprises and occasionally they'd say, 'Oh, isn't that Victoria Chin's family company?' And I'd feel small. Yes, small." Marcus looked up at her. "I was the COO of a major company, but I was also Victoria's husband. And the more success I had at work, the more I resented being connected to you in people's minds. I wanted credit for my own achievements." "But they weren't your achievements," Victoria said quietly. "You were managing a company I gave you access to with resources my family provided, representing a brand that existed for 40 years before you arrived." "I know that now." Victoria set down her pen. Let me tell you what I saw, Marcus. I saw a talented man with potential. Someone who needed an opportunity. I loved you, so I gave you one. And for the first few years it was wonderful. You were enthusiastic, creative, genuinely good at your job. But then you started staying late at the office. Not because of work, I could see the activity logs. You were staying late to avoid coming home. Marcus winced. She'd known. You stopped asking about my day, Victoria continued. You stopped touching me unless it was obligatory. You started talking about me like I was a burden. My wife doesn't understand business. My wife is too traditional. As if I didn't have an MBA from Kellogg. As if I hadn't been managing trust assets since I was 25. Why didn't you say anything? I did. Multiple times. You'd apologize, promise to do better, and nothing would change. And then Sloan started at the company, and I watched you become someone I didn't recognize. Marcus felt shame burning through him. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. Maybe not consciously, but you absolutely meant to hurt me. You wanted to punish me for being born into wealth you had to work for. You wanted to prove you didn't need me, even though everything you had came from me. She pulled out another folder, this one thicker. Do you know what this is? Marcus shook his head. Financial records. For the past 5 years you've been filing expense reports that included personal purchases, $12,000 for Sloan's birthday gift disguised as client entertainment, $8,500 for a weekend trip to Vegas claimed as a business development opportunity that no business partner attended, $4,300 for your gym membership listed as health and wellness program costs. Should I continue? Victoria, I'm not finished. Her voice remained calm but steel underneath. You wrote unauthorized checks totaling $87,000 over 3 years. Small amounts, usually under $5,000 that you thought no one would notice. You used company credit cards for personal expenses and had your secretary code them as business costs. You even, and this one particularly impressed me, you even paid Sloan's rent with company funds by listing her as a remote consultant. Marcus felt sick. Why didn't you stop me? I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to know if the man I married was still in there somewhere, or if greed had completely replaced him. She closed the folder. Now I know. So this whole thing, the divorce, the public humiliation, the severance, it was all revenge? No, Marcus. Revenge would have been turning you over to prosecutors for embezzlement. Revenge would have been ruining your name so thoroughly you'd never work again. Revenge would have been making you suffer the way I suffered every time you looked at me with contempt. She stood, walking to the window that overlooked Chicago's skyline. This was justice. You took from me my love, my trust, my generosity, and treated it like it meant nothing. So I showed you what nothing actually looks like. I took away the borrowed life you'd mistaken for your own creation. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and meant it for perhaps the first time in years. Victoria turned to face him. I believe you. But sorry doesn't undo damage, Marcus. Doesn't give me back 10 years. It doesn't erase the humiliation of learning my husband was cheating with his assistant. It doesn't fix the fact that you convinced Sloan, and probably yourself, that I was worthless. You're not worthless. I know. That's the difference between us. I've always known my value. You forgot yours the moment you started measuring it against mine. She returned to her desk and pulled out a final envelope. I'm not giving you the full severance. Marcus's heart sank. I'm giving you something better. In this envelope is a letter of recommendation, written by me, explaining your actual skills and contributions to Chan Enterprises. Not the inflated title, not the borrowed authority, your real work. You're a good operations manager, Marcus. You're organized, detail-oriented, capable of managing teams. Those are real skills. She slid the envelope across the desk. I'm also including contact information for 3 companies outside Chicago that are looking for operations talent. They're smaller markets where your publicity hasn't spread. You'll take a pay cut, probably down to $90,000 or $100,000, but you'll be building something real this time. Marcus stared at the envelope like it might vanish. Why would you help me after everything I did? Because destruction was never my goal. Education was. Victoria sat down again. I want you to succeed, Marcus. Just not on my foundation. Not with my resources. Not by diminishing me. Go somewhere else, start over, and build a life that's actually yours. She picked up her pen. We're done here. Sarah will validate your parking on the way out. Wait, you don't have a car anymore, do you? Marcus shook his head. She'll call you a car service then. Company courtesy. Marcus stood, clutching the envelope. He wanted to say more, to somehow express the complexity of what he was feeling: gratitude, shame, regret, hope. Victoria. Goodbye, Marcus. It was final. Complete. The door closing on a chapter of both their lives. Marcus walked out of the office, past Sarah, who politely offered him water while they waited for the car. Down the elevator. Through the lobby he'd never enter again. Outside, Chicago hummed with afternoon energy. People rushing to meetings, living their lives, pursuing their own versions of success. Marcus thought about the envelope in his hand, the recommendations Victoria had written despite everything. She'd given him one more gift. A chance to start over honestly. Marcus has received an unexpected lifeline from the woman he betrayed. But as he contemplates his future, what final revelation awaits? And has Victoria truly found her own closure? 3 months later, Marcus sat in a modest office in Milwaukee, reviewing inventory reports. His title was Director of Operations at Midland Manufacturing, a mid-sized company that made industrial parts. The pay was $95,000. Less than half what he'd made at Chun Enterprises, but honest. His apartment was small, furnished with IKEA basics. No penthouse views, no design or anything. But it was his, paid for with money he'd earned. The work was satisfying in ways Marcus hadn't expected. No one here knew about the viral videos or the public humiliation. He'd interviewed with Midland's CEO, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Hernandez, who'd read Victoria's recommendation letter and hired him based on his actual skills. I don't care about your personal drama, Patricia had said during the interview. I care if you can streamline our logistics chain and reduce waste. Can you do that? He could. And he was. Marcus had also started therapy, something he'd always dismissed as unnecessary. His therapist, Dr. Okoye, had helped him understand the difference between earned confidence and borrowed significance. You confused proximity to power with power itself, Dr. Okoye explained in one session. And when you felt that power threatened, you lashed out at the person who'd given it to you. That's not uncommon, but it is destructive. Marcus was learning to recognize those patterns in himself, to separate his self-worth from external validation. He'd also started dating cautiously. Nothing serious: coffee dates, dinners with women who didn't know his history and didn't care about luxury brands. One woman, Anita, a teacher he'd met at a community event, had actually laughed when he mentioned his old lifestyle. God, that sounds exhausting, she'd said. I'd rather have a partner than a peacock. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Victoria's life had transformed in different ways. The gala had been a massive success, raising $1.2 million for the Women's Business Initiative. But more than the money, it had repositioned Victoria in the public eye, no longer the quiet wife, but a formidable businesswoman in her own right. She'd done 3 major interviews in the months following the divorce, each carefully crafted to tell her story without descending into bitterness. I don't regret my marriage, she told a Forbes reporter. It taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and the importance of visibility. For too long, I operated from the shadows, thinking humility meant invisibility. Now I understand that leading means being seen. Chun Enterprises had thrived under her direct leadership. She'd promoted from within, bringing in a new COO, a woman named Darla Rashad, who'd been VP of Supply Chain and was brilliant. Employee satisfaction scores had increased. Profitability was up 18%. Victoria had also started dating, though she was in no rush. She'd gone out with a few men, a professor, an architect, a nonprofit director, but nothing had clicked yet. She was learning to enjoy her own company, to travel alone, to make decisions without compromise. One Saturday afternoon, Victoria received a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm doing better. I'm working in Milwaukee, living within my means, and trying to become someone I can respect. Thank you for the recommendation. Changed my life. I hope you're well. Victoria read the message twice, then showed it to her friend Keisha over brunch. Are you going to respond? Keisha asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to. Another part thinks clean breaks are cleaner. What does your gut say? Victoria thought about it. The anger had faded months ago, replaced by indifference and occasionally, a strange nostalgia for who they'd both been before things went wrong. The gala had been a massive success, raising $1.2 million for the Women's Business Initiative. But more than the money, it had repositioned Victoria in the public eye, no longer the quiet wife, but a formidable businesswoman in her own right. She'd done 3 major interviews in the months following the divorce, each carefully crafted to tell her story without descending into bitterness. I don't regret my marriage, she told a Forbes reporter. It taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and the importance of visibility. For too long, I operated from the shadows, thinking humility meant invisibility. Now I understand that leading means being seen. Chun Enterprises had thrived under her direct leadership. She'd promoted from within, bringing in a new COO. A woman named Darla Rashad who'd been VP of Supply Chain and was brilliant. Employee satisfaction scores had increased. Profitability was up 18%. Victoria had also started dating, though she was in no rush. She'd gone out with a few men, a professor, an architect, a nonprofit director, but nothing had clicked yet. She was learning to enjoy her own company, to travel alone, to make decisions without compromise. One Saturday afternoon, Victoria received a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm doing better. I'm working in Milwaukee, living within my means, and trying to become someone I can respect. Thank you for the recommendation. Changed my life. I hope you're well. M. Victoria read the message twice, then showed it to her friend Keisha over brunch. Are you going to respond? Keisha asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to. Another part thinks clean breaks are cleaner. What does your gut say? Victoria thought about it. The anger had faded months ago, replaced by indifference and occasionally, a strange nostalgia for who they'd both been before things went wrong. She typed a response. Marcus, I'm glad you're building something real. That was always the point. I wish you genuine success. Take care. V. She pressed send before she could overthink it. Keisha raised her mimosa. To closing chapters and writing new ones. Victoria clinked her glass against Keisha's. To knowing your worth. Understand. 6 months after the divorce, Victoria received an unexpected visitor at her office. Sarah buzzed her. Miss Chun, there's a Sloane Sterling here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Victoria considered turning her away, but curiosity won. Send her in. Sloane entered looking significantly different from the flashy persona Marcus had dated. Her clothes were designer but subdued. Her makeup was minimal. She looked chastened. Miss Chun, thank you for seeing me. Sloane sat without being invited, then seemed to realize her presumption and stood awkwardly. I'm sorry, should I? Sit, Sloane. What do you want? I wanted to apologize. Sloane twisted her hands together. For everything. For the affair, for believing Marcus's lies about you, for being so shallow and horrible. Victoria leaned back in her chair. What prompted this sudden conscience? I've been in therapy, and I've been thinking about who I wanted to be. I was so focused on appearing successful that I became someone I'm ashamed of. And I wanted to tell you that you were right to humiliate Marcus. He deserved it. But more than that, I wanted to say I'm sorry for contributing to your pain. I knew he was married. I knew it was wrong. I did it anyway because I thought. She trailed off. You thought what? I thought if I could steal someone else's life, I'd finally feel important. Victoria saw something genuine in Sloane's eyes. Not the calculating social climber, but someone young and lost who'd made terrible choices. Sloane, I appreciate the apology. I can't say we'll ever be friends, but I accept it. There's one more thing. Sloane pulled a folder from her bag. When I was dating Marcus, he gave me access to some files he shouldn't have. Client lists, proprietary processes. I didn't understand what they were at the time, but I kept them. I shouldn't have. They belonged to Chun Enterprises. She handed the folder to Victoria. Inside were documents that Marcus had clearly stolen, possibly planning to use them at a future company. Why are you giving these back? Because they're not mine. And because I'm trying to be someone better than who I was. After Sloane left, Victoria called her lawyer and reported the stolen documents. It was another mark against Marcus's record, but Victoria didn't press charges. The documents were recovered. That was enough. She was learning that power didn't always mean punishment. Sometimes it meant choosing mercy. A year after the divorce, Victoria threw a party. Not a gala, not a statement, just a celebration for friends and family. They gathered at her new home, a beautiful brownstone she purchased in Lincoln Park. Harrison, her uncle, pulled her aside at one point. "You've rebuilt well, Victoria. Your father would be proud." "I didn't rebuild, Uncle Harrison. I finally built something visible. There's a difference." As the party wound down, Victoria stood on her back patio, looking at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Chun Enterprises had been named one of Chicago's best places to work for the third consecutive quarter. She smiled. This, the company thriving, her employees satisfied, her reputation earned, was the success she'd always wanted. Not reflected glory but her own light. Victoria has found closure and success on her terms. Marcus is rebuilding honestly, but one final encounter will test whether they've truly moved on, or if the past still holds power over their futures. 18 months after the divorce, Victoria received an invitation that made her pause. Midland Manufacturing Annual Charity Gala, honoring companies making a difference in Wisconsin communities. Saturday, May 14, 7 p.m. It was a perfectly ordinary invitation, except that Midland was Marcus's company, and attached to the invitation was a handwritten note. "Ms. Chun, Patricia Hernandez, CEO of Midland, has asked me to personally invite you. Chun Enterprises supply chain innovations have inspired our own restructuring. We'd be honored if you'd attend as a guest speaker on ethical business leadership. I understand if you decline." Marcus Webb, Director of Operations. Victoria showed the note to Keisha, who'd become her closest confidant. "He's inviting you to speak at his company event? That takes either courage or complete obliviousness," Keisha said. "I think it's genuine. His boss probably doesn't know the full history. Just that I wrote him a strong recommendation. Are you going to go?" Victoria considered it. The petty part of her wanted to say no to maintain distance. But the part of her that had grown over the past year, the part that had learned about grace and moving forward, was curious. "I think I will." The Midland Gala was modest compared to Victoria's Chicago events. It was held in a renovated warehouse converted into an event space, with about 150 guests, local business owners, community leaders, Midland employees and their families. Victoria arrived with Darla, her COO, who'd insisted on accompanying her, in case things get weird. Patricia Hernandez greeted them warmly. "Ms. Chun, I'm so glad you could make it. Your work in sustainable supply chains is exactly what we're trying to emulate here." They talked shop for 20 minutes before Patricia said, "I should tell you Marcus Webb works for me. He said you'd written his recommendation, but I didn't realize the full complexity of your relationship until I saw old news articles. If this is uncomfortable for you." "It's fine," Victoria assured her. "Marcus and I are both different people than we were during our marriage. I'm happy to be here." Patricia looked relieved. "He's been an excellent employee. Honest, hardworking, no ego problems. Whatever happened between you two, it seems to have taught him something." Victoria spotted Marcus across the room, talking with a woman who appeared to be a date. Casual dress, comfortable body language, nothing performative. He looked healthier than she'd seen him in years, less rigid, more genuine. Their eyes met across the room. Marcus said something to his date, then walked over. "Victoria, thank you for coming." He extended his hand formally. She shook it. "Marcus, you look well." "I am. I'm doing work that matters, living honestly. It's different from before." "Different good or different hard?" "Both. But I prefer it." He gestured to his date, who'd followed him over. "This is Anita. She teaches 5th grade and has no idea who I used to think I was." Anita laughed, shaking Victoria's hand. He told me about his past, but honestly, I was more interested in whether he'd split dessert with me on our first date. He did, so I figured he was worth a second chance. Victoria liked her immediately. The evening proceeded smoothly. Victoria gave her keynote speech about ethical leadership and the importance of building businesses that elevate employees, not exploit them. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions. During the reception afterward, Marcus approached again, this time alone. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said. "Not just for the recommendation but for the lesson. I was angry at first after the gala. I thought you destroyed me, but you actually saved me from destroying myself." "I didn't do it for you," Victoria said honestly. "I did it for me to reclaim what I'd lost." "I know, but I benefited anyway. I'm not the person I was, Victoria. I'm paying back the money I took from Chan Enterprises. Small payments, but I'm doing it. I'm in therapy. I'm building a life that doesn't require borrowing someone else's foundation." Victoria studied him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility. "I'm glad for you, Marcus. Genuinely." "Are you happy?" he asked. "You seem different too. More present." "I am. I was hiding for a long time, letting others take credit because I thought that's what good leaders did. Now I understand that visibility isn't vanity. It's responsibility." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who'd once been everything to each other and were now polite strangers. "I should go," Marcus said. "Anita wants to show me this coffee place she loves. We're taking things slow, but I think she might be someone special." "I hope she is. You deserve a real partnership this time." "So do you." After he left, Darla appeared with champagne. "How was that?" "Surreal. But good. We've both moved on." "To moving on," Darla toasted. "To building our own success," Victoria countered. 2 years after the divorce, Victoria's life had fully transformed. Chun Enterprises had expanded into 3 new markets. She'd been profiled in Fortune Incorporated and Bloomberg Businessweek. She sat on 2 nonprofit boards and mentored young women entrepreneurs through her foundation. She'd also fallen in love, properly this time. David was an environmental engineer who'd consulted on one of her sustainability projects. He was impressed by her work but didn't define himself through it. He had his own career, his own passion, his own identity. They'd been dating for 8 months when he proposed, not with the elaborate production, but during a quiet dinner at home. "I love you," David said simply. "Not because of what you've built or who your family is. Because of who you are when everything else is stripped away. Will you marry me?" Victoria said yes. The wedding was small, 50 people, mostly close friends and family. No media, no spectacle, just celebration. During the reception, Harrison pulled Victoria aside. "Your father would be so proud of you," he said, his eyes misty. "Not because you saved the company or became successful. Because you learned to value yourself." "I learned from the best," Victoria said, hugging him. Later, as she danced with David, Victoria caught her reflection in the venue's windows. She looked radiant, not from expensive styling but from genuine joy. She'd spent 10 years making herself smaller to accommodate someone else's ego. She'd spent the next 2 years learning to take up space again, not aggressively but confidently. And now finally she was building a life that belonged to her alone. Across town, Marcus sat in his modest apartment, scrolling through LinkedIn. He'd been promoted to VP of Operations at Midland. He and Anita had moved in together. His therapy sessions had decreased from weekly to monthly. He came across Victoria's wedding announcement. A simple post from one of her colleagues, congratulating her. The photo showed Victoria glowing next to a man who looked at her with unmistakable adoration. Marcus smiled, genuinely happy for her. Then he closed the app and turned to Anita, who was grading papers on the couch beside him. "Want to get dinner?" he asked. "Taco truck or that new Thai place?" Anita replied without looking up. "Your choice." "Then Thai. You're paying though. Teachers don't make VP money." Marcus laughed. "Deal." It was ordinary, unglamorous, real, and for the first time in his adult life Marcus was content with ordinary. 5 years after the divorce, Victoria stood on a stage at a women's leadership conference, addressing 2,000 attendees. People often ask me about the public nature of my divorce, she said. They want to know if I regret how it played out, if I wish I'd handled things privately. And my answer is always the same. I have no regrets. She paused, letting the words settle. For too long, women are told to suffer quietly, to preserve someone else's dignity at the expense of our own. We're told that calling out bad behavior is vindictive or emotional. But I learned something important. Silence protects the wrong people. Applause rippled through the audience. When I finally spoke my truth, when I stopped making myself small to accommodate someone else's ego, I didn't destroy my ex-husband. I freed both of us. I freed him from a lie he was living, and I freed myself from being invisible. More applause louder now. If I could give one piece of advice to any woman in a situation where she's being diminished, it would be this. Know your worth. Not the worth someone assigns to you, not the worth society tells you to accept, your actual intrinsic value. And once you know it, never let anyone convince you otherwise. Standing ovation. Later in the speaker lounge, Victoria checked her phone. A message from Marcus. Saw your conference speech online. Powerful words. I'm glad you found your voice. She typed back. I always had it. I just stopped being afraid to use it. Victoria pocketed her phone and headed to the next session, where she'd be discussing her new book, The Phoenix's Revenge, From Invisible to Invaluable. The title was metaphorical, of course. Her revenge hadn't been destruction. It had been transformation. She'd risen from the ashes of a broken marriage, not bitter, but better. And that, she'd learned, was the best revenge of all.